So in this class, we're going to go ahead and create our request. So to do this, we need to have an object of our trip details, all right? And to have such an object, we need to have a class. So what we need to do is to create a class. And this class, we're going to call it new trip details, all right? So it will have properties of our ride information, all right? So the properties in that class is going to be our estimate fares, our our phone number, our full name, and the rest of other stuff. All right. So let's go ahead and create that. So because we are committed to keeping things organized, we're going to need to create a new folder. And this folder, we're going to call it data models. All right. Data models. Okay. So let's add a new class. Class. So I'm going to call this class new trip details. All right. So let's go ahead and add that. Okay, so I'm going to edit the access modifier and make it public. So let's go ahead and set important properties for this class. All right, so I'm going to say public double pickup plat get set, public double pickup plunge get set. So the reason why I'm taking time to type this out is because we won't be able to serialize lat launch object in a JSON, right? So that's why I want to use types like double and string, right? And just need to type everything out. Okay, so guys, let's proceed. We need to say public double destination lat, public double destination launch. I'm gonna set this, get set. So the next one will be pickup address. So I'm going to say public string pickup address. All right, get set. So the next one you guessed will be destination address. So public string destination address. Okay, get set. So the next will be our distance value and string. All right. So we're going to have public string distance string get set. So the next one will be public double distance value get set. So the next will be duration value and string. So we're going to say public string duration string get set. So the next will be public double duration value get set. Okay, so the next thing we need to set is our payment method, public string. Okay, so get set. The next one will be our timestamp. All right, so we're gonna need to have the time when we created this request, right? So I'm gonna say this is gonna be a date time. So public date time. I'm gonna call this timestamp get set. All right, so the next will be our ride ID, public string ride ID get set. So guys, we want to use this particular class to handle everything that concerns our trip request. Okay, so if that's the case, we need to go ahead and add our driver's ID to this place. So I'm going to say public string driver ID. Okay, get set. And last one will be our driver phone number. Okay, and actually the last one, the real last one. And this will be public double estimate fare get set. This is some very long class, so let me just go ahead and zoom out a little bit. Okay, fine. So now we are done with this. We need to go into our main activity and create an instance of this class, assign values to them, and use it to create the request on Firebase. All right, so guys, let's get right into it. So we need to define an instance of new trip details, but we need to make it a global variable, right? So I'm going to go to the top of our activity. Okay, so I'm going to come over here and say data models, and I'm going to say new trip details. So we need to bring this in. Okay, new trip details. All right, so let's go ahead and make use of this variable. Okay, so this is where we are going to assign value to the instance of our new trip details, and we're going to use the object and create our request. So I'm going to say new trip details will be equal to new trip details. Okay, so now we need to assign values to it. All right, so we're going to say new trip details dot destination address will be equal to, okay, so we don't have any variable that is called destination address. So now we need to find a way to get our destination address so that we can set it to our new trip details destination address. So to do that, we're going to go to the top and create two variables. One will be our pickup address, the other one will be our destination address. So I'm going to say string pickup address and string destination address. All right, so I need to make this small letter. So we need to go to the methods where we are setting our pickup location lat longe and our destination lat longe, and set our pickup address and destination address. Okay, so we're going to go to our onActivity results override. Okay, so which is this. All right, so this is where I'm going to be setting our pickup address. So we're going to say pickup address will be equal to place dot name formatted dot to string. Right, I'm going to copy this and put it here. All right, so we need to do the same thing for our destination address. Okay, so we're going to say destination address equal to place dot name formatted dot to string. So the next thing we need to do will be to go to our camera idle event handler and also set our destination address and our pickup address. All right, let's fold this. Okay, so we're going to clean this up and say pickup address equal to this, and this should be equal to pickup address. All right, so we need to do the same thing for our destination. So now we have our pickup address and our destination address is set. We need to go and continue creating our ride request. All right, so let's go back up, and we can now say destination address. Okay, let's start from the top, and this should be destination lat longe dot latitude destination lat longe dot longitude. Okay, duration string will be equal to map helper dot duration string. Distance value, distance. Okay, so this was supposed to be distance string. Driver ID, we don't have that yet. Duration, okay, So we're going to change this to duration as well. So this is actually a lot. So guys, just persevere. Estimate fares, and so for now we're going to just maintain this as cache. We've set our pickup address before, so we're going to set this pickup lat equal to pickup lat lunge dot latitude longitude. Okay, so the last will be our timestamp, and this will be equal to date time. So let's bring a reference of this. So this property will give us our current date and time. All right, we now have all this ready. The next thing we need to do is to now create our request. All right, so the next thing we need to do now is to create our write request on Firebase so that we can be able to find the available drivers. So guys, let's get right into it. So to do that, we need to create a new value event listener. So we're going to go ahead and create a class that will handle that for us, right? Okay, so we're going to go to our event listener folder because we want to make an event listener actually. All right, so to do that, we need to make a new value event listener. All right, so let's go ahead and create a new class that will implement that for us. So in the value event listener folder, we're going to add a new class. All right, so I'm going to call this class create request event listener. So let's go ahead and add this. So this class, I'm going to first of all change the access modifier, make it public, and we need to inherit from java.lang.object. And also we need to implement an iValue event listener interface. So we're going to say iValue event listener. So let's bring in references of Firebase. So now let's implement this interface. Okay, so we have uncancel and we have this as well. So the first thing we want to do here is to make our constructor, right? So in our constructor, we are going to be receiving an instance of our new trip details, all right? So I'm going to say public create request event listener, and I'm going to say new trip details. So let's bring the reference of this. I'm going to call this m new trip. Okay, so let's go to the top of our class and define an instance of new trip details. All right, and also we need it to be globally available throughout this class. All right, so I'm going to go to the top and say new trip details. I'm going to call this new trip. Okay, and also I need to have an instance of my Firebase database. Okay, so in our constructor, new trip will be equal to m new trip. Okay, and our database will be equal to app data helper dot get database. All right, okay, so the next thing we need to do is to actually create this request. So we're going to make a new public method. We're going to say public void. We're going to call this create request. Okay, so to create our request, we need a database reference, and also we need this database reference to be globally available throughout our class. So we're going to go to the top and say database reference new trip ref. Okay, so the ref there actually means reference. Okay, so we're going to say new trip ref will be equal to database dot get reference. So the reference is going to be at write request. So this is a table where we're actually going to be saving all our new requests. All right. Lastly, we're going to add push. So the push is very handy because it will generate a key for us. So the key is where we're actually going to be saving our new request, right? So now let's go ahead and make our hash maps. So I'm going to say hash map. So if you guys were in the formal classes, HashMap helps us to create our data to save on Firebase, right? So I'm going to say HashMap location equals to new HashMap. So the reasons for this is because we need to put the longitude and latitude of our location, right? So I'm going to say location.put. This should be latitude, and this should be new trip dot pickup latitude, right? So we are going to do the same thing for our longitude. So I'm going to say location dot put longitude new trip dot pickup long. So we will have to make a new map for our destination. Latitude, destination lat. So let's go ahead and do the same thing for our longitude. Destination launch. All right. So guys, there is still a couple of stuff that we need to assign here. All right. So firstly, I need to set my ride ID. I'm going to say new trip dot ride ID will be equal to new trip ref dot key. All right. So this will be our ride ID. So the key we generated when we called this push method, we're going to set it as our ride ID, right? So let's go ahead and continue. So now I'm going to say my trip dot put location. I'm going to set my location hash map here, all right? So we do the same thing for our destination. Destination. So other things we need to set will be our destination address, okay? So I'm going to set it to new trip dot destination address. So the next one will be our pickup address. Pickup address. So the next thing we need to set will be my rider ID. That's my own ID, right? So I'm going to say my trip.put rider ID. And to get this, we're going to say app data helper dot get current user dot UID, right? So you guys see how the app data comes in handy, right? So let's go ahead and set the remaining stuffs. Payment method. Created at dot timestamp. So let's just use to string, right? So the next thing we want to set will be our driver ID. Okay, but a driver hasn't been assigned to this ride yet, right? So we're going to say driver ID. I'm going to allow it to be waiting. So when we find a new driver for this trip, we'll set the ID to this place, right? But for now, it's going to be waiting. So the next thing we want to do is to put our name. This will be rider name. Let's just go ahead and say app data helper dot get full name. So this will return our name for us. And we need to set our phone number as well. rider phone, and this will be app data dot get phone. So the next thing we're going to do is to now say new trip ref dot add value event listener. I'm going to say this. Okay, so now let's proceed and say new trip ref dot set value. This is where we'll now set our my trip. So this will actually create our request and also start listening to changes to our request. So now we are done with this. We're going to go back to our main activity and instantiate our request. So let's go to our main activity. All right, so now we need to create an instance of create request event listener. All right, so we want this to be a global variable as well. So we're going to go to the top. We're going to say create request event listener. So I'm going to call this request listener. Okay, so let's go back and continue. So this is the point where we initialize our request listener. So we're going to say request listener equal to new create request listener. All right, so I'm going to parse it our new trip details. Okay, I'm going to say new trip details. All right, finally to create the request, I'm going to say request listener dot create request. So this will go ahead and create our request on Firebase. So to test this out, let's go ahead and run our app. Okay, so everything seems to be working just well. So let's set our pickup location, right? Okay. Okay, so now let's set up destination. Okay. So guys, before I request, I want us to show us what our database looks like currently. Okay, so we have our drivers and we have our users. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and create the request. So when I create a request, I'm expecting a new table to arrive here, and the table will be ride request. Inside of it, we are going to find our first request. Okay, so we're going to go back to our emulator and click on request cab. Boom. So our request has been created, guys. So if you inspect this, we have our created at our destination, which is the longitude and latitude of our destination, our destination address, our location, our payment method, pickup address, ride ID, that's our ID, rider ID rather, that's our ID, our name and our phone number. Okay, so guys, this is how to create a new ride request. In other classes, we're going to be looking at how to find a driver for this ride. I really hope you enjoyed the class, so see you in the next one.